Hello! Welcome to English for Shared. Here, you learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's go!
Moses and the crossing of the Red Sea. The Bible is full of stories that touch the heart, move us, and strengthen our faith. Among them, one of the most well-known and moving is the crossing of the Red Sea led by Moses. This event was not only an impressive miracle, but also a milestone in the liberation of the people of Israel, who had lived in slavery in Egypt for centuries. The scene was one of suffering, fear, and uncertainty, but also of hope. God had promised to free his people and chose Moses to lead this mission. The journey, however, would not be simple. They would face persecution, obstacles, and moments of great affliction. Even so, God's powerful hand would be revealed in every detail. The crossing of the Red Sea isn't just an ancient story. It holds timeless lessons about trust, faith, and perseverance. It shows that even when all seems lost, God can open a way where there's no visible exit. This episode not only marked the liberation of the Israelites, but also became a symbol of divine faithfulness. To this day, it inspires millions of people around the world to believe that no problem is too great when we trust in God. Join us in this narrative, and together we will relive this journey of faith in 5 chapters, feeling the anguish, hope, and joy of the people of Israel, and discovering how the power of God transformed a moment of despair into victory.
The enslaved people in Egypt. The people of Israel had multiplied greatly in Egypt since the days of Joseph. This large population aroused fear in Pharaoh, who began to view the Israelites as a threat. To control the situation, he turned them into slaves, forcing them to perform hard and painful labor. The people's lives were marked by pain and injustice. Amidst so much suffering, the Israelites cried out to God for help. And the Lord, in his faithfulness, heard the cry of his people. He had already prepared someone for this mission, Moses. Raised in the Pharaoh's palace, Moses knew both Egyptian life and his Hebrew roots. But after a mistake in his youth, he fled to the desert, where he spent many years tending flocks. It was in this simple setting, in the desert, that God revealed himself to Moses in an extraordinary way. A burning bush burned without being consumed, and there the Lord spoke to him. God called him to return to Egypt and free the people from slavery. Moses felt insecure, thinking he was incapable, but God promised to be with him every step of the way. Moses obeyed the call, though fearful, and returned to Egypt. With the help of his brother Aaron, he confronted Pharaoh several times, begging him to let the people go. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he refused to release the Israelites. It was then that God demonstrated his power through the 10 plagues. The river's waters turned to blood, frogs and locusts invaded the land, and darkness covered Egypt, until finally the final plague came, the death of the firstborn. Only the Israelites were spared because they obeyed God's command to mark their doors with the blood of the Lamb. Faced with this tragedy, Pharaoh finally relented. He allowed the Israelites to leave slavery behind. The people, now free, left Egypt in haste, taking with them their belongings, animals, and the hope of a better future, trusting in God's promise.
The exodus from Egypt was an emotional moment. Men, women, children, and elders marched together, forming a throng heading toward the unknown. The people were happy to leave slavery behind, but they also carried in their hearts the fear of what might happen next. God, however, did not leave them alone. During the day, a pillar of cloud went before the people, showing them the way. At night, this cloud transformed into a pillar of fire, illuminating the darkness. Thus, everyone could proceed safely, knowing that God's presence guided them. As the Israelites walked, Pharaoh began to regret having allowed the people to leave. He thought of all the manpower he had lost and was filled with rage. He then decided to gather his chariots, soldiers, and horses to pursue the Israelites and bring them back by force. The mighty Egyptian army rushed out, ready to capture the people who had barely begun their journey. The sound of horses and iron chariots echoed across the desert, as the Israelites, unaware, pressed on, trusting God to lead them. The moment was one of contrast. On one side, a fragile, tired, and defenseless people, carrying children and animals. On the other, the most feared army of the time, armed to the teeth and determined to recapture the fugitives. This persecution set the stage for an unprecedented miracle. God was about to show everyone that He is greater than any Pharaoh, any army, and any obstacle. The journey was just beginning, but it already brought with it a great lesson in faith. The people before the sea. After a long journey, the Israelites reached the shores of the Red Sea. A vast barrier of water lay before them, impossible to cross with so many families, animals, and belongings. The people stopped there, unsure of what lay ahead. It was at that moment that, looking back, they saw Pharaoh's army rapidly approaching. The chariots and horses kicked up dust on the horizon, and the sound of the Egyptian troops echoed terrifyingly. Despair gripped the Israelites, who felt trapped. Many began to murmur against Moses, saying it would have been better to have remained in Egypt as slaves than to die there in the desert. Fear seemed greater than faith. The people wept and screamed and could see no way out. But Moses was not shaken. He trusted that God had not delivered the people only to let them die. So, in a firm voice, he declared,
Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." These words were like a breath of hope in the midst of panic. God heard the people's cry and told Moses to go forward. It was a bold command, to go forward even in the face of the sea. The Lord was about to act powerfully, showing everyone that no barriers could impede his will. In that moment of tension, when all seemed lost, the people were about to witness one of the greatest miracles in the history of humanity.
The miracle happens. God commanded Moses to raise his hand over the sea. As soon as he obeyed, a strong wind began to blow during the night, parting the waters. Gradually, the impossible happened. The Red Sea parted, forming a dry path right in the middle. The Israelites were both amazed and frightened. To their right and left, enormous walls of water rose, while ahead appeared a path through which everyone could cross. It was a scene no human being could have ever imagined witnessing. With renewed courage, the people began to cross. Men, women, children, and even the animals followed the path opened by the Lord. Each step was a mixture of faith and awe, for they knew that only God could perform such a miracle. Meanwhile, Pharaoh's army, in its arrogance, decided to follow suit. Their chariots and horses entered the open sea, attempting to capture the Israelites. But their plan was doomed to failure. When the last Israelite reached the other side safely, God again commanded Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea. Immediately, the waters returned to their place, covering the Egyptians. None of the soldiers survived. The people of Israel were amazed at their deliverance. They saw with their own eyes that the Lord was more powerful than Pharaoh, and that nothing could defeat those who trust in God.
The Song of Victory. Faced with such a great miracle, the people of Israel could not contain their joy. Their hearts were filled with gratitude and hope. They had escaped slavery, faced fear, and seen God act in power. It was time to celebrate victory. Moses then sang a song to the Lord, extolling his greatness. He proclaimed that the Lord had defeated his enemies and displayed his strength before all. The song was a hymn of deliverance, a reminder that God fights for his people. The men's voices joined in, singing words of praise. The women, led by Miriam, Moses' sister, took up tambourines and began to dance, celebrating joyfully before the Lord. It was a celebration of worship, filled with emotion and gratitude. This moment marked not only the end of Egyptian persecution, but also the beginning of a new phase in the life of the people of Israel. They were now free, marching toward the Promised Land. The crossing of the Red Sea would forever become a symbol of God's faithfulness. Future generations would remember this miracle and tell of it as proof of God's love and power. More than a victory over an army, this event taught the people, and all of us, that there is no closed sea before God. He can always open paths where we see no way out. Conclusion. The crossing of the Red Sea is not just an ancient story recorded in the Bible. It is a powerful reminder that God is capable of extraordinary actions on behalf of those who trust in Him. Faced with a closed sea and a relentless army, the Lord opened a path impossible to human eyes, showing that nothing is beyond His control. Like the Israelites, we often feel trapped by life's difficulties. Problems seem to rise like an insurmountable sea before us, while worries and fears stalk us from behind. But the message of this story is clear. God specializes in opening paths where we see no way out. The people of Israel learned that victory comes not through human strength, but through trust in the Lord. This lesson remains true today. When we surrender our fears and challenges to God, He transforms despair into hope, doubt into faith, and defeat into victory. May the crossing of the Red Sea inspire us to believe more, trust more, and remain steadfast even in times of greatest affliction. Because, just as in the past, the God who parted the sea is the same one who today opens doors, tears down walls, and guides His children safely to victory.